Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the 18th session of the IAN Knowledge Series. We've covered a variety of topics, from validating a business idea, government initiatives for startups, sales and pricing strategies, product market fit, valuations, term sheets, to successful fundraising strategies. We hope every week was insightful with a lot of learnings. Our topic for today is digital marketing insights, and we will discuss how to leverage data to run successful marketing campaigns, tactical considerations to get a better return on your marketing spends, and tools and technologies you can use for your campaigns. I'm Kanchi Daiya from the Indian Angel Network, and joining us today is Mr. Pradeep Gupta and Dhaval Gupta. Mr. Pradeep is the chairman of the Cyber Media Group, the specialty media house with brands like DataQuest, PCQuest, Voice and Data, DARE, CIOL, and Global Services. Mr. Pradeep is also an active angel investor and has mentored over 250 startups. He is the co-founder of Indian Angel Network and was a global trustee of TIE and the GP of India's first angel fund, Infinity Ventures. Mr. Pradeep is an engineer from IIT Delhi and an MBA from IIM Calcutta. Welcome, Mr. Pradeep. We also have with us Dhaval Gupta, who is the executive director and heads digital initiatives at Cyber Media. Dhaval has a keen understanding of media and technology space. He has played a pivotal role in establishing Cyber Media as a leading digital services setup. He is the architect of cyber media partnerships with Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and oversees a monthly network of over 5 billion digital ads. So thank you so much, Mr. Pradeep and Dhaval, for your valuable time today. The participants are eager to hear from you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kanchi, for that lovely introduction. And it is indeed a pleasure. And what we will do is that in the next 30 minutes, I will just walk you through a presentation. The presentation will be in two parts. One is the strategic part, and then the other is the tactical part. And I will take the first part and then request Dhaval to take the second part. So let me start off by talking about the digital marketing insights, and talk about the quantum shift that is taking place to digital. Now, first thing is that we are all aware of this, that post-COVID scenario, and I'm going to talk about three things. One is that there is a sharp recovery, there is digital transformation, and customer going digital. Let me talk about the sharp recovery. And I think this is a very important point, and startups need to change their mindset and should stop thinking of the year that has gone past, but make this change, because India's economy will grow by more than 11%. So this is the best year that is now ahead of us in this entire millennium, right? And therefore, I think what is first and foremost which is required is a very sharp change in terms of the mindset of startups, saying that let's forget about what happened in the last 1 year, but let's focus on this great opportunities which is beckoning us now. The second thing that I just want to talk about is the digital transformation. Now, thanks to COVID, digital first as an idea has been around for decades, but it really got deployed on a massive scale, thanks to COVID. So, suddenly whatever were the mind blocks that we had got removed. We could work from home. There was technology which was being utilized, whether it was manufacturing, whether it was, supply chains, all variety of things. There was a transformation that started taking place. And two things that I would like to focus on. One is that a lot of it was led by deep tech. And I have seen various startups, and I'm sure some of you are IAN funded, and some of you are looking at raising funds from IAN. You already are looking at different kind of technologies. You're looking at various deep tech to lead this digital transformation that is happening. And the second part that I want to focus is on the last part, which is that the consumer behavior changes that are being made that have been made in the last 12 months are permanent. Okay. So because of these two things, we are talking about a huge digital opportunity, and some of the people are talking about, you can see the numbers there, led by growing digital awareness and dominance of new age technologies. You're looking at almost a $80 billion kind of an opportunity. Benefits, you all know, perhaps I'm preaching to the converted, but you can increase in revenues and profits as compared to offline businesses. Efficiencies are much better. Marketing costs could be down by 60%, operation costs by at least 20%. E-commerce, finance, training, innovation across different kind of functions that a company involves itself in. Reduced turnaround time, wider consumer base, not just domestically, but also as far as the global markets are concerned. So the message that I just want to leave, and as I said, probably all of you are already using the digital trends, but you need to accelerate them. And that is something which is very, very important. Of course, I'd mentioned that one is that the companies themselves need to be digital and lead that transformation, but also the customer is going digital. And for that, I will illustrate it through some industries. Let me start with my own industry, media industry. So, online has completely redefined our industry. If you look at television and films industry, that is getting completely redefined by OTT. Online gaming has surged. And, within these 12 months, our industry is looking completely different. Okay, we ourselves have pivoted in a big way. The way we used to do our seminars and so on, completely replaced by webinars and online presence and so on. It's a different world. Let me look at another industry. Let's look at the edtech industry. Social distancing, school closure, it immediately meant not just as a teaching tool, not just for content, but edtech made a complete sort of a change in terms of whether it is proctoring, whether it is assessment, whether it is testing, everything in the edtech industry changed in the last 12 months. Look at this is a very interesting statistics. You look at different categories, food and beverages, clothing and accessories, and so on. Now, in food and beverages, 24% of the customers used online purchases for the first time. Okay. Clothing and accessories, 20% of them used it for the first time, and so on. So anywhere from 15 to 25% people were the first time users of different kind of digital services. Again, reiterates the point that I made earlier, that we are talking about a new consumer that is there. Emerging lessons obviously from that are that we need to get into this consumer mindset. We need to understand their behavior. We need to understand their lifestyle. We need to build in flexibility in our offerings. We need to be the engine so that we can ensure that the customer going digital is served by the various startups that are. And a very good sort of a testimony to this is, and I was pleasantly surprised to see some of these numbers which just came out. This is the Dentsu report, which was just released about a week back. If you look at advertising, 51,000 crores, 56,000, 62, 68,000 crores, it came down to 56,000 crores in last year. There was a 17.5% dip in terms of the spending on advertising. But look at the digital ad industry. The digital ad industry continued to grow during this time, and it moved from 13,683 crores to 15,782 crores. So if you actually look at the percentage, it's now a very significant player in terms of the communication with the customer. And almost 30% of the budget now is getting spent in terms of digital outreach. Now, the models of digital discovery are also changing. So, traditional model are a thing of the past. Then it was to social media-led discovery. Then it was transaction-oriented digital presence, that you were on various kind of e-commerce sites and so on. And you're now talking about a hybrid model. You're talking about social media influenced e-commerce. So this is, a significant sort of a shift that is taking place in terms of how your product gets discovered. And let me again sort of look at some more industries and see what are some of the changes that are happening in those industries. Look at retail, e-commerce model, B2B, B2C, GST, entire automated processes there. So if you look at the retail industry, it is transforming itself. Manufacturing, export competitiveness, you are talking about remote manufacturing. You're having assembly lines with socially distant assembly lines, backward integration, a whole lot of Atmanirbharta coming because of the US-China related issues that have been there. Education, I talked about, but even if you look at the content side, gamification, e-learning, and so on, so that is changing. Look at travel and hospitality, again, the shared economy, incredible India, tech augmentation, and so on. Logistics, hyper-localization, logistics, which are very, very elastic now. So if you look at each and every vertical is getting transformed because of the trends that I talked about. One is that the startups themselves are having a tremendous amount of digital transformation within their DNA. And the second thing is that the customer is also transforming himself and is looking at more and more of digital delivery. Now, therefore, what it means is that the marketing objectives of the companies that have been there also start, there has to be a tactical change which is there. One marketing objective is to create trust and value for the brand. And trust and value today gets created in a very, very different manner. It gets created on social media. It creates different kind of circles of influences for the long term. So, you need to look at different kind of marketing tactics here. If you look at data, that has become a very, very important thing, because it is now possible for us to and Dhaval will talk more about it in the second part of the presentation, that data becomes the focus in terms of understanding your customer, in terms of making offerings, and in terms of because digitally it is possible for us to fine tune the offerings which are there, personalize the offerings, continuous marketing. This, of course, that never have a complete brand blackout. Continue engaging with the people, and that you can do digitally. Hyper-local solutions, and essentially be very, very flexible. And this again has got accelerated, because if you look at the old world, from the time you thought of a message till the time you created the message and till the time you distributed the message, whether it was on print or whether it was on television, the entire cycle was a much longer cycle. Today you can actually have flexibility. So earlier, what you were doing was that you created a message which took perhaps 90 days, and then you blasted it for another 90 days. Today, you are talking about a message creation which happens on a daily basis, and therefore you need to create 180 messages going every day. So that's that's a complete about turn in terms of the market communication that has now been created. So with that sort of a background, I will just pass the baton to Dhaval and request him to talk specifically about some data and tools, and how one should go about planning these campaigns. So over to you, Dhaval.
Thank you very much. So I think first half of what Mr. Gupta covered, was very interesting in terms of the overall strategy, the overall sort of movement in the industry from a marketing point of view, and what are some of the things that you ought to be looking at as in key metrics to help you identify sort of the bigger opportunities with respect to marketing. The next few slides I'm going to spend on really the data and the tools part, right? And data is something that is becoming really a very, very critical component when we talk about marketing. About maybe a decade back, definitely a couple of decades back, most of the marketing that used to happen used to come down to the decision making of either your CMO or the agency, who based on their best guesses or best experienced guesses would be able to put together a media plan and so on. And therefore, there was a huge amount of inefficiency in those systems. Today in marketing, of course, you would have all heard that content is king. But if content is king today, definitely data is what gives you the kingdom, right? So really, the first thing that I want to emphasize on is data. And as you would have all also read, privacy is becoming a very, very important concern when it comes to data globally, right? I mean, the most recent Apple entire marketing is built around privacy and how they are going to be providing protection for the users who are on Apple vis-a-vis their data. And so this shift that is undergoing in that entire globally and in the entire world is going to give a rise to the first party data. And this is very critical component when it comes to marketing. This is really, really going to evolve the entire marketing industry in a big way. This is, I wanted to spend a little bit of extra time on this part. So the first party data, how do you build that? Ensure that you're, of course, getting data from all the sources that you have, and you are able to collect that in a central pool. And not only collect all that data, but also able to process it so that you can get a better understanding of the audiences that you are working with. What is the engagement that those users are therefore able to give? And so how do you attribute, provide attribution to the users in terms of not only their engagement, but also behavior becomes a very, very important component of marketing moving forward. And you would have seen for many of you who've done marketing in the past as well, that the technology part of this is coming and the tools part of this is coming into the mix at a very, very fast pace, right? And finally, ensuring that you are able to take your sales data and really map it on top of the marketing funnel, right? So it's not good enough to just have a marketing data set. I think it is very, very critical that it be layered with the sales data, so that every time you're making a change in your marketing strategy or your marketing activities, you are able to see a direct and quick response in the sales. And if that is not happening, then that becomes a very important aspect, feedback mechanism for you as a brand. Now we have a sort of a demos dashboard that we have created. What I'll do is I'll run through the slides and I'll come back to the dashboard later and just walk you through, just a example of a system that you can create as a real-time marketing dashboard. Right? So talking about data, today, collecting the data, of course, is important, but understanding really the psyche of the user in detail and in its entirety starts to become very, very critical, right? So these are some of the areas that we strongly recommend brands to have an understanding or start building an understanding of who their users are. And some of this is, of course, easy to collect, but you may have to apply different levels of machine learning, different levels of AI to really process this. And now, one of the questions we often get with respect to this is that, should this be done in-house, or maybe, marketing is, of course, not necessarily something that you may have a big team on, or a lot of expertise on. And therefore, there are a lot of partners out there, a lot of tools out there that you can leverage, which will help you build a lot of understanding about who your users are. So very quickly, just touching on this analysis of behavior, demographics analysis, living style analysis, location, of course, is very critical, especially if you're a startup looking at hyper-local engagements, live campaign response analysis, audience insight reporting, and device mapping. I would also want to say that, especially the audience insight reporting becomes very relevant for B2B marketers as well. Okay, just a very, very broad look at some of the tools which are highly relevant for digital marketing. I think you would have sort of come across most of these, and this is by no means, a sort of an exhaustive list at all. There are a huge number of tools that are available in the ecosystem, but this is just a very quick snapshot that if you are not looking at least these areas and some of the best tools that are available in this, then you should be talking to your marketing team and should be talking about, look, can we use some of these modes to ensure that we are reaching out to the right target audience and that we are able to see what are the results that are coming from them. We have seen so many brands, and we work with so many startups when they activate a certain channel, which they have not done in the past. And it just ends up giving a response that was not expected. So it's important to not leave any stone unturned. And I also want to take a minute here to just mention that experimentation is something that you should do as a brand, right? So investing in either a different kind of communication or in newer tools is something that is going to typically be rewarding over the longer term as you build better and better understanding and get more and more data around what's working and what's not working. Right. Now, one of the main aspects of any marketing, and right up front, especially when we talk about the startup ecosystem, is that, look, I need ROI, I need performance, I don't have a huge budget, and so everything that I'm spending, needs to come out in terms of a sales value. And that's perfectly fair. And so therefore, performance marketing becomes extremely critical when we talk about, a lot of brands in the startup ecosystem. Now, this really varies from industry to industry. And also, if you have a B2B startup versus a startup focusing on B2C, these metrics for what drives performance marketing will really vary. But these are some of the things that you ought to keep in mind. And so the activities or the metrics that are very critical right up front. So the keyword part, multiple campaigns, and we can really go into a lot of detail around, geolocation targeting, lookalike audiences, behavioral targeting, and so on. Strong call to action, very proactive bidding systems, landing page optimization, monitoring, and of course, finally, goal conversion, right? So again, if there are aspects of these metrics that you're not clear on, ensure that you are working on those individually, looking at them very, very carefully, and that is what will help in providing optimization for the brand. Just a very quick, again, from a performance point of view, some of the biggest platforms globally. I'm sure you are all aware of all of them, just in case the last two are Outbrain and Taboola. But really, I mean, these are very prominent tools. One of the areas that I also want to just introduce here is the growth of programmatic. Now, programmatic is not something that may be the first call of action when it comes to performance marketing. Having said that, programmatic marketing now is starting to allow you to reach out to targeted audiences in a much targeted manner, and also see which are the areas or which is the type of inventory from where you're getting better response. Of course, the precursor to that is that you must have your first party data figured out and your audience profiling fairly accurate, and that is what is going to give you better results when it comes to programmatic as well. Right. So approach to paid media, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. Of course, you may have seen a lot of different gyan in terms of, sort of these funnel based slides, which talk about awareness, consideration, preference, conversion, and loyalty. But what I wanted to do was to specify what are the tools that we have found that are extremely effective for each level of the funnel, right? So when we talk about awareness, of course, there are more tools available for it. But as you kind of go down the funnel, what are going to be some of the different tools that you need to look at and deploy becomes critical. And of course, this really varies from organization to organization, depending on the maturity that you have and where in the funnel you're engaging any particular any particular user. The bullet points here at the bottom, I think this is something very critical, which is that it is important to ensure that you are looking at the funnel in its entirety, right? Just building awareness and then straight away going into remarketing is not enough. In fact, one of the areas where we strongly recommend is that, if you have, let's say, led a consumer to conversion, that's brilliant, but the marketing engine does not stop there, right? You also want to take that customer to the journey where they have experienced your product or service and still gotten engaged with the brand enough that they convert into loyal customers, right? So marketing, of course, and again, because it is data enabled, you can really look at this across various levels. But today the marketing engine is extremely complicated. There are tools involved. There is technology, of course. There is data involved. There is a very large funnel, and it's all like playing a stock market game. So it is complicated, but there are good solutions that you can find. Right now, with that, I want to move on to brand media strategy. And how to sort of take the brand to market, and what are some of the considerations that you need to have. And again, this is a good checklist in terms of the what your marketing team ought to be looking at from a digital marketing point of view. So before launching a full-blown media strategy, really the step one is to really understand the past, present, and future about what are the objectives of the marketing campaign. Who are the target audiences, the geography, competitors, and the product details, right? The content assets associated with the particular brand. And so this ought to be very clearly defined by each startup, right? And this needs to, if it's not down on paper, we strongly recommend that you actually put it down on paper, because as you get into more complexity about providing a brief or creating a workflow for marketing, all of these content assets or all of these points start to become more and more relevant, right? So instead of reinventing the wheel, you can easily refer to all of these things, and it'll again help build a better understanding of what is going to be the right GTM. And very importantly, what is going to be the right budget, right? And I have a following slide on the budget part. But identifying the right amount of budget that you want to put in is very critical, again, so that you can build a clear ROI strategy. We see a lot of B2C based, particularly B2C based startups, where the budget part is very important, simply because that is a direct contributor in terms of what is going to be their GMV and what is going to be their growth and so on. So the budget part is something which is important. What's the right media mix? Of course, seasonality, the creatives, and also what are the success metrics that you're looking at, right? Now, as startups, a lot of you would be looking at success metrics on a day in, day out basis or a week in, week out basis to say that, okay, our business is growing in the right direction and so on. And marketing is your marketing dashboard or your marketing success matrix should replicate or reflect that aspect also. Right. So that's something that should be very closely tied in with one another. And once you have all of this clarity in terms of this is what my marketing team requires from step one. Step two is then to sort of really get into the nitty gritty of which are the marketing activities that are going to take you forward and propel the brand forward, right? So put together the relevant information, identify the data that is currently available with you. That's a big problem. So if there a lot of brands work in a manner where they may not have access to all the data, and if you don't have access to a certain degree of data, we really encourage that you make sure that you identify how you can get your hands on that data, right? See how much insight you can build on top of the data. And then once you've filled in the missing data, you can then build a plan of action, right? In a comprehensive plan of action across, again, a large number of channels, both online and offline. It doesn't have to be, the data is going to help you build your, even your offline channel budgeting, your offline channel activities. The data part is going to really make a difference as far as that is concerned. Right. Now, budget setting. Right now, this is always a tricky one. Of course, there's no right answer. I think the right answer is something that many founders or CMOs have to really come up with the answer to. But here are some thumb rules of what you can, if you are not very comfortable or have not done this exercise before. Here are some thumb rules of how you can go about deciding what the right budget for marketing should be. Right. So the first one is really fixed percentage of sales. Right. The simplest one, it's easy for everybody to understand. It's easy for the teams to understand. And so start with last year's, for example, whatever has been the gross sale, and apply a percentage to it and say that, okay, this is going to be the amount of money that we are willing to put. Right? And typically this goes up to a maximum of 5%. Now, if you're a startup and if you've raised money, particularly with a focus on that, hey, you need to now do the outreach and grow the brand visibility, this 5% could of course be much higher, closer to 20 or 25% also. But typically, most businesses would earmark about between 2 to 5% of their budgets towards annual advertising. As I mentioned, very safe, easy to follow. Another sort of thumb rule here that you could use is to say that, okay, the marketing team is responsible for generating X amount of sales. And so therefore, 2X of that is something that the marketing team can continue spending on, right? In a situation where you're looking to grow your market share. Right? Comparable to the competition. So this is the second way to work out a budget. You can get your media teams or your marketing teams to put together that, okay, in terms of a category as well as in terms of specific competitors, what is a general spend that is being looked at, and therefore, that in order to be equally competitive, there needs to be a ballpark or a range between which you need to set your marketing budget as well, right? And of course, the last one is that you can simply create a budget and say that, okay, we're going to do it in continuation. So if there's a past budget that you have, then you can, establish it as per that as well. Okay. Coming to the marketing success metrics, I had touched upon this earlier. And I think really the first thumb rule is that, your marketing success metrics need to be aligned with your overall business metrics, right? Should not be, they may not be exactly aligned, but they shouldn't be far apart. And there should be a correlation between the two, at least from contribution to either a top line or a bottom line perspective. Right? Of course, business goal, as I'm mentioning, the examples could be increase in sales. So that's from a top line perspective, or it could even be increase in market share growth, right? So if you're in a burn mode, if you've raised a lot of capital and you want to really gain market share, you can create definitely a very aggressive marketing roadmap, which ensures that you have that you are steadily improving your market share. Of course, how do you measure your market share is a whole different challenge, and it is important to have that in place prior to rolling out a marketing strategy. What you need to know, I think it's important that to really identify to the marketing team, where is business growth going to come from, right? As in which product or which line of business or which service is going to contribute to the business growth. And this point has a very important corollary, which is that your marketing team should also be able to today, based on the data, suggest that, hey, based on the user feedback, if we deploy a particular product or service in this mode, then we may be able to get better traction, right? So it's got to have a two-way effect, which is that not only the marketing team knows that where the business growth is going to come from or what are the focus areas, but also vice versa. The founding team should be open to looking at some of that data to realize that, hey, this is a potential money that we're leaving on the table, and if we invest in some degree of marketing on that side, we should be able to get better traction, right? What marketing team should do, so really identify how and where the media can help. I think the last few slides spoke about, of course, a wide range of platforms, a wide range of tools and so on, but which are the ones that will give ROI upfront? That's important. Brand should be able to define what marketing is going to translate to improve business goals. And again, this is having a good understanding between the goals and where the business growth is going to come from. And as has been the critical theme that we have been talking about, measure everything, right? So consumer tracking or consumer attitude and usage studies to measure for awareness, brand equity, and active consideration. And digital data such that search inquiries, web traffic, or social media trafficking, all of this is going to be very, very relevant. That overall, if your business is heading in the right direction, then these metrics, or these should go, should improve over time, right? So the number of search queries for your brand, or the overall website traffic, of course, the overall sale for the traffic, all of these are very good metrics to look at on a day in, day out basis for your marketing team to show that, okay, yes, things are heading in the right direction, right? Just one last slide on staying current. I think it's not easy to, especially in marketing industry, there is so much data around, there is so much noise. It's easy to sort of get confused in terms of where to sort of reach out for data and information. Just a slide in terms of some of the credible news mediums, or some of the credible sort of areas via which you can get more and better quality information. So yeah, just how to stay current, right? And with that, I think we've come to sort of to the end of the presentation. I hope there was interesting food for thought for everybody there, and perhaps we can move on to the questions.
Thank you so very much, Pradeep and Dhaval. That was indeed very, very insightful, with some very, very practical tips that you all shared, whether it's covering the landscape and what the larger picture looks like, and getting more into tactical considerations of what founders need to do and be wary of as they launch their digital marketing campaigns. So thanks once again for that. To all our founders on the call, as you can see, we've left ample time for question and answers. Please feel free to leave your questions via the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. I've received quite a few via the registration form, and I do see some coming in through the Q&A tab as well. So we'll start with that, but we do have time for your questions. So please do put them in the Q&A tab. So with your permission, if you want, we can go ahead and start the Q&A session. All right, great.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So the first question is, I think maybe since this is a topic that you recently covered, Dhaval, are there any pointers on how to access competitor budgets?
Yeah, so in India, a lot of this, the industry has a very a good quality grapevine. Not always good quality, but if you should be able to typically find out a decent amount of information from particularly the ad agency networks, to get a broad understanding of what are kind of the budgets that are being put by various or some of the bigger players, the medium-sized players, the smaller players in this industry. It may not be exact figures, but broad numbers. We would encourage your marketing team to reach out, to relevant agencies to get an idea of that.
Okay, lovely. Thanks for for answering that. In terms of, so what are the new tools which can be developed in-house, and also how to optimize the costing for that?
Yeah, so great question. So I think that's a very fundamental decision that every startup needs to take. That do you want to invest in those tools, or do you want to use certain open source tools and so on to really build up, particularly let's say around CRM systems, around of course the first party data part, and so on. You would typically need a experienced team of, I would say, at least 4 to 5 people to put together a comprehensive, understanding of data across multiple sources, right? Right from, of course, the website part. Earlier, if you would imagine that most businesses used to deploy a team of maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people on a website development project, the data part is probably going to add, sort of you'll have to add another 4 people at least in order to sort of realign everything. And it would take a minimum of 2 quarters to start sort of getting it to a place where it is providing, we feel, comprehensive data. This is what we have seen. There's again, I'm talking about averages. There are brands that can struggle with that for longer, and there are brands that are able to sometimes put together that mix quickly. But it is, I think it is important that you do at least bring in experts who have done it before, and that is really going to solve at least a time problem, right? Not necessarily a big investment problem, but a time problem. Again, the startups that are very tech savvy, they will be able to also figure out the IT infrastructure part. One of the, I'll give you a small example. One of the things that we recently had with a startup that we were working with was, their page load times were high, and as soon as they sort of started collecting more data, that had a serious impact on their page load times even further. And so simple things like that. I mean, that's a very simple example, but things like that, need to be managed very quickly, so that the brand doesn't end up losing out in the long run in terms of customer experience and so on.
I would just sort of add to that, and I would say that yes, there should be a core team for doing specific things, but there are a number of players in the entire ecosystem, experts in whether it is the research or actually ensuring that what sort of communication should be there and so on, and therefore have a core team as well as interact with specialists in different kind of areas.
Fair point. Thank you. The next question is more because, from a B2B founder, so would like to understand how to effectively utilize digital marketing in context of large ticket B2B SaaS offerings by a startup to large enterprises. So how would that differ for a B2B SaaS company?
Yeah, so, again, as far as the B2B SaaS area is concerned, see, the principles are going to be the same, right? Which is that you will have, your target lists which are there. You will have what are the various ways, what are the best ways to communicate with them and to reach out to them. And you will have your various collaterals and product offerings that will be there. So, that is what would be the best way of reaching out to so I would say first thing is to start with the list. Who are the people that you want to reach out to? Okay, and see what are some of the common areas or platforms or various things that you can utilize to reach out to this B2B audience, and then reach out to them. I mean, for example, products such as DataQuest, PCQuest, and so on, we do reach out to specific communities. So depending upon the community you want to reach out to, CIO, so you pick up which is the right kind of a way to address them, and that is the way you need to go.
If I can just add to that in terms of, I mean, again, when it comes to B2B SaaS, typically the impact, or they're trying to influence probably one or two decision makers. Either it could be a business decision maker or technology decision makers within an organization, right? So it's really important to get those few decision makers right. And again, that's something where collecting the relevant first party data and therefore doing the tracking to build personalization so that you are able to address the concerns of those specific decision makers is something that there have been a lot of success from a B2B point of view. It's not so easy to do, but that's where one will find a lot of success when we talk about B2B SaaS.
And another thing which is very important for B2B SaaS models is to get good testimonials. Okay, so get the first few customers, get some great testimonials from them, and build your communication around those testimonials.
Absolutely, lovely. And are there any channels? Because there's another question that's come in. Just to extend the B2B marketing query asked by someone else earlier, and to go specific on tools, would Facebook make sense at all? Wouldn't LinkedIn be a better option? If one had a limited budget, which one would be a better choice?
A very specific question, and typically LinkedIn is better for B2B, simply because the way the targeting is set up and the way you can target certain specific communities, LinkedIn does a better job of that. From an ROI perspective, by the way, LinkedIn is going to be a little more expensive on Facebook. But what you can do is that if you've, let's say, started off on LinkedIn and gotten the right list of of audience that you want to remarket to, then it may be a good idea to then also create a remarketing list on Facebook and then reach out to them on both platforms. So I think that's the cycle in terms of how many touch points you end up doing for B2B. Just that part needs to be extended a lot.
Absolutely. So LinkedIn. Sorry, there seems to be some echo. So yes, absolutely. LinkedIn does work for B2B campaigns. But there's a founder who has an additional question to that. Follow up to this question: in supply chain space, wherein the majority of the target buyer persona is not active on LinkedIn, any ideas where to start with on systematic marketing with shoestring budgets? Email, they're not sure whether it works as well or not. So what were your suggestions to that?
Yeah, I think two broad ways to look at it. One is that, are most of those interactions being done one-on-one, or is there a community sitting anywhere, right? So for example, we have seen that for a lot of communities that are not on LinkedIn, actually another good platform right now is WhatsApp for Business, right? And there are certain communities that are built on WhatsApp, which you can start experimenting with and reaching out. And that actually takes it from connecting with a particular community and then further easily taking it to a one-on-one communication, because WhatsApp is a platform like that, right? So there are, of course, always these innovations available, and the marketing engine doesn't stop. So if LinkedIn is not ideal, I think the question is really that where is that community sitting? I mean, if they are sitting on WhatsApp, then that's just an example. WhatsApp is a way to go. But if they're not sitting on WhatsApp, then and perhaps if you have a database where you have their SMSs, then maybe that is even as a starting point a good place to start. And even if you don't have SMSs, then maybe an event where you invite 100 of them so that you can get all their details is a great place to start. So again, it depends on where they are in the funnel in terms of engaging with a lot of these users that they want to reach out to, and then systematically sort of coming down the funnel one after the
other. It depends on what that industry is. But I would suspect that when you're talking about people not on LinkedIn and so on, you're probably talking about small businesses. And if that be the case, then you will probably find that there is some geographical concentration that very often happens. There are various associations that are formed. So you need to find out those clusters, and you need to find out what is the commonality in those clusters. And once you have identified those, then you can go ahead and go after physical clusters, or you could go after associations and so on.
Yeah, digital activities with or physical activities with trade associations is actually a great suggestion. And I was also going to add that you then also have platforms in India today like India Mart, Trade India, and so on. And again, they have a huge amount of community when it comes to various small businesses who are tougher to reach out to or don't have a LinkedIn profile and so on. And so these platforms, you have to kind of identify the right platform. And again, India Mart has a ad tech solution. So if you go and tell them this is the audience we're looking for, you can create a campaign there.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Very great insight. In terms of, so here's another question. In terms of running a campaign. So how long should should they run a campaign ideally to analyze the KPIs of a particular campaign? Or should we run a single campaign with multiple ads for a period of about 28 days? Or can we run for 7 days and improvise 4 times and optimize the campaign?
So 7 days, I would say, is not. I would want a clarification on which platform one is referring to. But typically, 7 days is so when you start a new campaign. A new campaign will take the algorithms of any, let's say, Facebook or Google, will take a little bit of time to optimize on that particular audience, on where they are getting better clicks from, what are build sort of lookalike audiences, and so on. So 7 days is too short a time, right? You want to be steady in the beginning, and of course you want to cut out wastage, but whatever is working should not move around that too much, right? So I would in fact suggest that once you start a campaign, stick with it for a little bit of time. After 2 to 3 weeks, remove or reduce the budgets on the targeting, which is giving, let's say, the 20% or worst performing keywords. You can kind of remove that, right? And then sort of see if there are other keywords that you can replace that with, or just simply increase the budget on the keywords that are performing, right? And when I say keywords, of course, I'm referring to Google, but similar thing on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter and so on. So be steady in the initial piece. Of course, whoever is setting up your campaign should understand technically Google or Facebook very, very well, right? And once and set up the campaign with, of course, whatever is the best shot, because the data again that is getting collected by Google for you as a brand is going to eventually become relevant in giving you the ROI.
Okay.
I would just like to add to that, and that is that it depends also on the product and or the service. Okay. So in marketing, there is no one rule that fits all. Okay. Depends on what exactly is the offering that you have. And some offering may require sustained campaigns, just being continuously in touch. Some campaigns may require a big burst, and then after that, smaller ones. There are some campaigns where you may require a sort of a, a half sine curve kind of a campaign. So it depends on what the product and the service is. And in the past, one used to go to an ad agency, right? And the ad agency used to bring that knowledge of what really works with different kind of products and so on. It is the same kind of a thing that needs to be done today as well. In terms of using the experts in digital marketing, not the traditional ad agencies, but the people who are experts in digital marketing, and say what really will work for my product or my service.
Absolutely, lovely. All right. So there's another question that's come for more from a B2C standpoint. So for B2C SaaS models, what would be a low cost but more effective marketing tool?
I mean, I want to understand the product. Maybe what I'll, maybe it's something that requires a deeper chat and a deeper conversation, just so that one understands what is the service product, and then be able to give more specifics in terms of how that what is the right strategy, which could be a low cost strategy. But I think frankly, there are a certain number of things that any marketing team could do, which is on a tight budget, which is that, particularly when we talk about B2B, I think it's in the TG is something that can be really, really well defined, and it can be done very, very quickly, right? So if there is an investment, or when I say investment in terms of time, let's say over a course of a couple of months, in terms of speaking to the customers, in terms of speaking to sending them your content assets, and getting a whole lot of feedback in terms of what's working, what's not working. Is it better? Is this not better? Maybe create a very simple video, and send that out. So I think that interaction can often give insights, and help fine tune the messaging and fine tune sort of who you want to reach out to. And that actually is very good legwork for any marketing team. Basis which, then at least whatever budget you do want to roll out, you start out on the right foot, and you're not spending too much effort and energy in the beginning doing A/B testing. Right. So in marketing today, I mean, one of the things that we do advocate quite a lot is doing a whole lot of A/B testing. Again, depending on what is the size of your budget. But if you are on a tight budget, then at least the A/B testing part kind of should be done beforehand, with sort of maybe 10 marketers, or potential customers with whom you have a good relationship, and then sort of start seeing how that rolls into communication. And then what you can also do is that when we talk about the remarketing part, that remarketing part, instead of could potentially be taken offline, where there is a very sort of a calling mechanism in place and so on. So then there is a budget that then needs to be applied to the calling mechanism and so on. So there are ways to sort of definitely work on a small budget, and one will have to, of course, see what is the kind of response coming. Thumb rule: 5% of the budget of sales, should go towards marketing as a budget.
Lovely, thanks.
But let me just reiterate on one point that Dhaval started with, which is that it depends on what is the industry, what is the product that you're talking about in B2C. If you are talking about, let's say, education, okay, whether you're talking about a retail product, whether you're talking about clothing, whether you're talking about face cream, for each of them, there will be different ways by which you will reach out. Even within education, are you trying to reach out to college students? Will be a different strategy as compared to if you're trying to reach out to school students. Okay, so go by the TG and then decide what is the right sort of a mix that should be there.
Lovely, thank you. Now I do have a question more from a different target audience. I know you've covered this briefly when you talked about offline trade unions, but we're working on an agri-tech platform with farmers and commodity traders as the target audience. We're on track to launch an MVP soon. Any pointers on digital media platforms to explore with focus on a rural market? And I've got a similar question for their audience being in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So if you have any suggestions for that, that'll be great.
So WhatsApp, anyway.
So WhatsApp is one you can explore. I think today, when we talk about SMBs, I had earlier also spoken about IndiaMart. And so, if you're looking at a community, let's say in a tier 2 city, there will be a huge amount of traders or businesses from those cities sitting there. Another great option is Truecaller. So, organizations like Truecaller have built very comprehensive data sets, and you can actually go into a very, very specific kind of, again, targeting of audiences, and they have very good coverage across the country. Even the OTT platforms, where Netflix maybe is not the right example, but we talk about Hotstar and so on, they have a huge amount of tier 2, tier 3 data also, because consumers are sort of signed up for cricket and so on. So these are some of the more prominent platforms that are sort of coming to mind immediately. I mean, I would still say that Facebook is Maybe not for rural areas, but tier 2, tier 3 towns is very good coverage. And so Facebook, something you can definitely explore as well. I think that as you kind of consider digital versus offline, it is relevant to say that, okay, are these communities sitting on digital to begin with? Right. So it doesn't, I think, again, it takes a little bit of legwork to understand that, yes, a certain percentage or certain aspects, audience of this community is actually available on digital. And if nothing else, SMS marketing and affiliate marketing is also one of the tools that was highlighted in my presentation earlier. And so the SMS marketing or the affiliate marketing route is definitely something that can be explored also. It'll give you slightly lesser feedback, but still, it's nonetheless a good platform to explore.
Again, when you look at agri-tech, one way of outreach is through, as I said earlier, through WhatsApp groups. But you can also use, the reverse kind of a thing by having a help desk. Okay. So you can get a whole lot of inward queries coming in because of that help desk kind of a thing. Or you can use a CSC network, which already is reaching out to rural areas, and ride on that. So, once again, it depends on the product, depends on the service. And that's how, you can look at different ways of marketing.
Yeah, as a very specific example, so I've been involved in the IFCO Tokyo insurance campaign some time back, and predominantly focusing on rural India, right? And of course, we leveraged Google and Facebook and so on. And by the way, Google also has a pretty good spread across across those geos. But what they also did was identify, what are the some of the newspapers or the local sort of brands that are consumed, and especially the younger generation is starting to consume them more and more frequently. And so that is where the media buying or the media planning part comes in, right? So it doesn't just have to be a platform-based approach. This is where you can sort of really go into the heartland and identify some of the media platforms that are being consumed, both, of course, again, offline as well as digital, and then say that, okay, yes, we want to sort of build up a brand with those audiences and then go after them. So the vernacular part is growing very rapidly across the country. Definitely look at that very, very closely. And I don't see, I don't think that it'll take too much time before really the vernacular media starts to, on digital, reach a level of maturity like the English speaking and the Hindi speaking audiences as well.
Lovely, thanks. I'm sorry I lost connectivity in between when you were giving the presentation for a minute or two. And I remember you had mentioned that you have a dashboard. So I was just curious to know, did we show that or should we still show that to them?
Yeah, I can share my screen real quick and I can show that.
Okay, that'll be lovely.
Okay, just 1 second. Right. So, what we do is that in case of brands that we work with, this is an example of a demo dashboard that we have created. Actually, it's for an international client. And, the idea is to have a lot of data collected and processed in the back, which then allows you to get a lot of insights at your fingertips, right? And this is, data that effectively, for this particular, for our particular, in our case, clients, we update on a daily basis, right? So very quickly, and I'll go down, but this is, as I mentioned, for the US market. So, these are the kind of the regions that it's divided into. And similarly, what is the pipeline stage? Is it an active lead? Is it, trying to schedule, reschedule, call schedule, and so on? What is the source? I had earlier talked about, making sure that your marketing engine is covering multiple sources. And so, let me just scroll down a little bit here. Yeah, so all the various sources. So, this is now capturing data, not just through digital sources, but even through offline sources, right? And then what is effectively the price range that we're talking about for this particular client, and of course date. Now, what this does is that, let us say I want to, look at the pipeline stage, which is, let me remove this and just choose green. Okay, let me see. Right now, what this will do is that it'll give me data on my fingertips, for the green leads that I have, right? And across all the different parameters that I choose to, right? So city-wise impact, or my region-wise impact, in terms of what are the number of green leads across the different channels that I had. And this is another sort of representation of breakup in terms of where it's coming from and how much it's contributing to, right? So this is the kind of dashboard that again, this is a very basic demo dashboard that I'm showing, but this is just to give you an idea and flavor of what are the key metrics that you need to be looking at and following. Just moving along to some more analysis and some more viewpoints, right? So leads by price range, right? What are the different kind of price points? What are the different, how many green leads are coming from different sources? And of course, from my team, who is contributing to how many number of leads, right? So green leads, not scheduled, junk leads, rescheduled. And by the way, we also end up mapping this across their sales funnel. So that's not represented here, but it kind of maps that, okay, this is the ROI that actually they got on this. By the way, this is a very straightforward Google Data Studio representation, but really the magic is that where we are applying Python, and Python is cleaning up and processing the data in the back. And that's an entirely automated process, right? This is in terms of the different digital platforms and which are the cities that are contributing these digital platforms. So again, and then some weekly insights, some data associated, with that. So, and then within this, we can layer a whole lot of other information and data as well, right? So again, any data and information that needs to be shared, it's something that we are able to do very quickly in real-time manner. And basis this, we are also able to decide very quickly what are the changes that we need to make in the marketing campaigns that are being run, right? So, so yeah, very quickly, just wanted to show an example of a simple demo dashboard for marketing purposes. But yeah, this can be raised to a higher level of complexity depending on whatever are the primary metrics that that any startup is looking at.
Lovely, thank you. Since we're nearing the end, should we do a quick rapid fire for the last few questions that we have coming so we don't miss out on the few?
Who is it for?
Pardon? Either of you, whoever prefers to take. I'll just pick a few so that we don't leave a lot of them unanswered.
Sure.
One is on the privacy of data. So what are the tools and options we can exercise to keep the data secured?
So data security is, of course, today there's a huge number of tools available. Whoever is your cloud service provider, the cloud service providers today, let's say AWS has apps, Google, AWS, Microsoft, they all have absolutely top-notch security in place. When you're collecting the data, I think the biggest challenge actually is that how the team shares that data and the team processes that data. And I think the team, team's ability to manage that is very, very critical when it comes to security. That's probably the biggest concern.
And I would just like to add that if you are collecting the first party data, then please ensure that you have the proper permission and so on.
Yeah. So the privacy part that's where it comes in, because while in India, this is still in the formative stage. In Europe, for example, with GDPR laws, and in US, but in California in particular, CCPA has been established, and they are very strict in terms of how the data can be used, who can use that data, for what purpose the data can be used. So in India, this should be coming in the I mean, we don't have a timeline exactly for it, but there is a note in the cabinet for it, and there is a committee that is taking a decision on this.
Lovely, thank you for answering that. I've seen quite a few questions coming in terms of when should they start investing in digital marketing. So there's a founder that's asking, that's in the edtech sector, and there are a few others that haven't specified which sector, but they'd like to know when would be a good time to start.
Yesterday.
Okay.
If your product is ready,
absolutely.
If your product is ready, absolutely.
Okay, lovely. So the question is when, when should they go organic, and when do they start investing in paid campaigns and start taking a budget out for paid campaigns?
You don't need to wait for building organic to go paid. I think that is that's a myth. So of course everybody prefers organic, but organic is not going to give you the wide outreach. And if your product is ready for that, then you should look at paid marketing as soon as you're looking at organic marketing.
Okay, lovely. And the last question is how to allocate the budget between awareness and performance campaigns.
So it depends on what is your objective, right? I mean, we had spoken about, are you looking at, gaining a lot of market share? Are you looking at, a very tight ROI orientation? Is it about brand building and sort of getting a lot of content out? So depending on the objective, one can sort of work out that, hey, X amount of money should go towards brand building and paid versus paid marketing and performance marketing. So, I don't think there is also, by the way, it also depends on, of course, which industry or which category you are in. And it also depends, what sort of the price points you're at. So yeah, what stage you're at in your maturity. So, a lot of startups initially at least have a tighter budget. So initially invest more in performance or entirely in performance. And then sort of as you get more and more comfortable and get more ROI, you can take out budgets for, if I can call it experimentation, and then put it in either in branded budgets or further paid marketing.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so very much. That was an incredible session with some really, really good insights. Truly appreciate it. And on behalf of all the participants, a big, big thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the close of this session. To all our participants on the call, it's been an incredible journey with all of you over the last 6 months. We truly hoped that you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Now, I have received quite a few emails and messages from founders inquiring about the recording of this series. We will be publishing this entire series as a playlist on Indian Angel Network's YouTube channel. So I'm going to go ahead and share the link via the chat box. In case you're interested, just please do click on subscribe and notify, so you get notified when the series is published online. So yeah, that brings us to the close of this session. And if, of course, as usual, if you have any questions or are looking to raise capital, feel free to write to me. I've put my email ID in the chat box. I'm available at Kanchi at indianangelnetwork.com. And yes, that brings us to the close of this session and the series. We wish you all the very best for your entrepreneurial journeys. And thank you once again for being a part of this.